paranormal experience, but I can say that this story is one of the most horrifying experiences I've had. It was back in September of 2010. My grandma was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. It was Sunday when I first encountered this lady wearing a black gown. I was home alone at the time, since our family goes to my uncle's farm every Sunday. My brother and I were raised by our grandma and aunt. I was reading a book. My bedroom's door was open. I could see the living room outside and the screen door that leads to our garage. Suddenly, I felt a cold wind that seemed to surround me within my room. That wasn't normal, as our AC wasn't on, and all the windows in our house, including those in my room, were all completely shut. I looked into the living room, and there I saw her, the lady wearing a black gown. She looked to be around her 40s, and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I froze and I stared at her. She wasn't looking at me. She seemed to be walking. No, she seemed more like she was floating. She proceeded to go through the living room door that led to the garage. I didn't yet tell anyone in our family what I encountered that day, since they've always been skeptic and didn't believe in the paranormal. Little did I know, that was the day that started my sleepless nights. My grandma's bed was soon moved to that living room, since she liked watching the TV there until she went to sleep. The main bathroom is also more accessible there. So whenever I'd wake up late at night to go to the bathroom, I would turn off the television for her if she was sleeping. It's always been just me and her at the house during those times, since my brother stayed at our aunt's house, which was just beside ours. That first night after seeing the lady, I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and I turned off my grandma's TV like I always do. When I was on my way back to my room, I passed my grandma's bed, and that's when I noticed there was a woman standing next to her bed. It was the lady wearing a black gown, the same one from before. She was just standing there. It seemed like she was guarding my grandma. She wasn't even looking at me. I got so scared, I rushed and went to my room and locked my door. I slept with the light on that night. The following night, I told my grandma that I was going to sleep beside her that night. I was scared that this lady would do something to hurt her. She asked me why, so I simply said I wanted to sleep beside her like I did when I was a kid, and she agreed. My grandma fell asleep, so I turned off the TV. I didn't get enough sleep the night before, so I fell asleep too, but it didn't last long. I woke up, and there she was, standing next to my grandma's bed, but with a bit of distance this time. I panicked, but I didn't want to wake my grandma, so I ran to my room, turning on the light, but I left the door open to make sure nothing happened to my grandma, just in case. Days passed, and I still had sleepless nights. I always felt that there was someone inside my room with me, but there wasn't anyone there. The woman wearing a black gown was always guarding my grandma, standing next to her bed every single night. Weeks passed, and she would still be there. One day, my aunt hired a nanny for my grandma to help her with her needs. My aunt requested that she slept on the couch near my grandma's bed for a few nights, so she did. I couldn't help but worry about her, so I told her of my encounters with the woman in the black gown. Of course, she didn't take me too seriously, and told me it's just your imagination, since I was 16 years old at the time. I didn't say anything more and just left her to her business. The next day, morning came, and we were about to have breakfast. I saw the nanny, and she looked as if she didn't get any sleep. She looked at me and said, I saw her. She seemed to be very scared. She asked my aunt if she could go home every night to sleep at their house instead. When my aunt asked why, the nanny replied she couldn't sleep well at our house so my aunt obliged. My days stayed the same. The lady in the black gown was still there, and I wouldn't get any sleep at all. I think I even got sick due to lack of sleep. I was also in high school at the time, so it was hard for me. One morning, I was having breakfast with my aunt, and she asked how I was doing. She said that I looked sick, so I spilled everything. I told her about the woman wearing a black gown, standing next to Grandma's bed every single night. This time she looked like she was convinced. She knew I was someone who loved to sleep, someone who rarely got sick. Grandma came to have breakfast with us, and she looked annoyed. My aunt asked what was up, and my grandma looked at me and said, "Why were you going inside and out the living room to go to the bathroom last night? I couldn't sleep, and you wouldn't listen when I asked you to stop." My aunt and I looked at each other. My aunt was shocked. I hadn't gone to the bathroom last night, since I felt really sick. So who was it? I didn't tell this to Grandma, so I simply apologized. Months passed, and I got used to the apparition, since she really didn't do any harm, and I didn't want it to affect my lifestyle anymore. The strange thing was, I still had this feeling that there was someone in my room with me, and that feeling would not go away. And something told me that energy wasn't the same energy that came from the lady in black. Every time I tried to sleep or close my eyes, even for a second, I felt as if there was going to be a face right in front of mine. So I always tried to stay awake. It was terrible. I was getting very sick, so my brother decided that he'll sleep on the couch next to my grandma for the next months. He was a cat lover and brought all 6 of his cats with him, which we all loved dearly. That night, I bid him and my grandma good night and closed my door. I fell asleep right away, but after a few minutes, I woke up with my pillow being pulled. I opened my eyes, and I didn't move, but I still felt the pillow being dragged from my head. I froze. I was shocked and terrified. Suddenly, my brother yelled, "Hey, wake up! Get out of your room!" I snapped out of it, ran and opened my door. There, all 6 cats were sitting right in front of my doorway, surrounding it. I looked over at my brother and I was about to cry. I ran to him, and before I could even say anything, he told me, "Don't sleep in there." My cats were never this bothered, and ever since you closed your door, they just sat there. That's usually not a good sign. I felt scared, so I yelled out and called to you. I cried and told him what happened. He believed me. He told me I could sleep in his room for the night, and he'll stay with my grandma, so I did. I never did see what gave me that dreadful feeling in my room, or the thing that pulled my pillow, but I'm glad it's over. As for the lady wearing a black gown, she did disappear when my grandma was getting better. It's been 11 years. 4 years ago, my brother passed away, but my grandma did survive cancer, and she's still around.